Hello, this is Ron DiNapoli with SandCrater Software. Today we're going to talk about querying with MiniECal. MiniECal is an Exchange calendar assistant that allows you to query the calendars of other users on your Exchange system. Now, depending on your access rights to the calendars of other people on your Exchange system, you may see the full details of their schedules, or you might just see free busy information. Before we proceed, make sure that MiniECal is configured to talk to your Exchange server. If you are unsure how to do this, you can consult your Exchange administrator or visit the SandCrater website and watch our Configuring MiniECal video for assistance. Once MiniECal is configured, proceed to the main view in the application and make sure that the segmented control at the bottom of the view is set to query. That's the rightmost setting. Once you are set in query mode, tap on the config button that appears in the lower left-hand corner. This brings up the configuration view for querying. We call this the ad hoc query because it allows you to query one user at a time. There are three different settings you have in this view to do two different things. The first is to specify what number of days you want to look into the future for somebody's calendar. It can be done either by just specifying the number of days from today, or you can use the date picker with a start and end date toggle to specify an exact start date and an exact end date. The other setting in this view is the user to query. When you enter the user you would like to query, you can do so in a number of different ways. If you specify a user as user@hostname.com, where hostname.com is some domain associated with the user, MiniECal will look for a user in the Exchange environment with the ID user@hostname.com. If the user is specified simply as user with no domain information, MiniECal will look for a user named user with the same domain as the email domain you logged in with. Here's where it gets a little complicated. If you did not specify a fully qualified email address in your configuration for your login info, and you did not specify any domain information when you entered the user's identity in this field in the query configuration screen, MiniECal will look to see if you happen to enter a domain value in the server settings view, and if you did, it'll use that domain along with the user ID specified here. This is a very odd case, and it's not one most users would run into, so don't worry if it seems like it's a really complicated explanation. But let's clarify this. In the server configuration screen, there are two places where you can enter domain information. The first is along with your email address. So if you have an email address of user@mycompany.com, the mycompany.com part is thought of and stored in MiniECal as the email domain. MiniECal also provides you with a way to specify a Windows domain in the domain field that appears two spots below. Most users of Exchange 2010 or later don't need to specify anything in the domain field. Some users who are using Exchange 2007 servers may need to specify something there. For the purposes of queries, just know that if anything is specified in that domain field in the server settings view, it is stored in MiniECal as the Windows domain. So keep in mind those two different domains as we proceed to discuss how querying works. So whenever querying, anytime you are asked to query a particular user, MiniECal will go through this process. If the user to query contains a domain name, meaning it's user@something, then MiniECal will look for whatever it was you typed in as the identity in the Exchange server. If, however, the user you entered does not contain domain information, we'll check to see if there is an email domain stored from the server configuration screen. If there is an email domain stored, then the query will happen with the username specified, and MiniECal will append an @ sign and the email domain. If there is not an email domain specified, and this is probably a very rare case, then MiniECal will check to see if there is a Windows domain specified. If there is a Windows domain specified, MiniECal will build the query using the username you entered. It'll append an @ sign and then the Windows domain. And if there is no domain information specified anywhere, MiniECal will just attempt to query the user as you entered it. So let's talk about querying an ad hoc group. This is where you can use MiniECal to look at multiple users' calendars at the same time. To do this, you would go into group mode, which is the middle segment of the segmented control that appears at the bottom of the main view. Once you're in group mode, tap on the configuration button on the lower left-hand corner to bring up the configuration view for groups. What you'll see here is a list of any previously defined groups that you may have defined. You have two options for where to store these. They can be stored locally on the device, or you can store them in iCloud so that any device that is linked to the same iCloud ID will have all this group information. Decide where you would like to store. We're going to create a new group, so let's decide where we would like to store it. In the example here, we're storing it locally on the device. To create a new group, tap on the plus button that appears in the bottom of this view. This will create a new group and bring you into a new view to specify the members of this group. Once in this new view, tap on the plus button again for every user you want to add to the group. So let's say we want to create a group with 3 users in it. We'll tap this button 3 times and we'll get 3 entries to fill in. At this point, create a name for the group and then add entries for each user to query in this group. Remember the query rules that MiniECal will use that were discussed on the previous slides. When you have entered all the users that make up this group, tap the Save button and you will be returned to the previous view and your new group should be showing. So suppose I just name that new group My Group. If I want to then query this group and see the calendar information for everybody I specified, then I'm going to specify the number of days I would like to look forward in the first field that is that you can fill data in. I'm going to then tap on My Group to select it, and then I'm going to tap on the Use Group button at the bottom to kick off the query. That concludes our discussion of how queries work in MiniECal. For demonstration information on how a group query actually looks, check out our MiniECal website at www.sandcrater.com/MiniECal, where you'll find YouTube videos showing you how to configure MiniECal and how queries look. If you have any additional questions, please contact SandCrater Technical Support at support@sandcrater.com. Thank you very much.